It's majors in English, amongst so many other things. But I'm going to introduce you to the audience. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I really didn't realize I was going to be on the panel today, but I want to thank for letting me come on the panel. What I want to say to you that a child's spirituality is extremely important, and we all know that. But I want to take the conversation or discussion on a different level. The church. We don't seem to realize how powerful the church was in keeping people's sanity when they came to this country. You know, it kept a lot of people's sanity, and it enabled them, you know, in the workplace where they faced racism and things like that. The church is somewhere they could go and be treated as equals, be treated as if they're somebody. You know? So we're in a situation, and I want to focus on our children, because our children are our future. And so we have to put in a lot into our children. The church is there to help our children, to help our community. But parent leadership is extremely important. Extremely important. Not only that, our children, when they go to school, if they're not confident, they can get destroyed quite easily. So it's important, I feel, that parents prepare their children. You have to prepare your children extra, especially for the negativity which they are going to achieve in school. I just want to read you something from the book that Dr. Keith Davidson and myself wrote. And I just want to tell you, I mean, a lot of you are familiar with Bernard Cord. He wrote a book in 1971, right? How black children are made educationally subnormal in the British school system. If you're not familiar with that book, if you could get it, it's a booklet and it's worth reading. But I just want to share something with what he says and then my commentary on it. How did this low level of achievement by black children come about? Cord demonstrates this aptly by the way he explains how black children are made to feel inferior each day in the classroom here in the English schools. He's made to feel inferior in every way. He's told by a variety of means that he is intellectually inferior. His language is second-rate. The black discovers that all the great men of history were white. He discovers that white horses, white rocks, and white unicorns are beautiful and good. But the word black is reversed for describing the pirates, the thieves, the ugly, the witches. This was in Bernard Cord's book, 1971, how the Indian children are made educationally subnormal in the British school system. My commentary on that, the strong point being made here by Cord is that if everything associated with the word black is negative, at times evil, then black children will feel bad about themselves. They, the black children, will become very conscious about themselves and consider themselves of little worth because of their blackness. If one ponders a little longer, one can see that these negative associations are very crippling emotionally for the black children. The negative connotations with the word black are persistent and are repeated time and time again. For example, black death, black male, black plague, black list, black magic, black sheep, black leg, black letter, black look, and the inventory goes on and on. This use of the adjective black connected to the noun mentioned above have a damaging effect that black children would be sensitive to as they experience them daily in the ordinary classroom setting and society in general. So our children, if we don't prepare them to let them know who they are before they enter the school system, right, they get destroyed. I want to bring something to your attention also. Some time ago, they used to test children before they started school. Right? And the black children came out 20% above all other ethnic groups. 20%. And by the time they leave the school system, they're 21 points behind. They were 20 points above, and they're 21 points behind when they leave. So something happens to our children. So as parents, we need the church because we need that support. We're in a society that is racist and we cannot ignore that. But we must pay attention to our children. You know, we have a way of talking about shades of complexion and good hair and stuff like that with our children. We want to take that out. We want to start valuing our children for who and what they are. I have never ever met a child who, you know, did not want to learn. Every child I've met wanted to learn, right? But some children learn differently, right? And as parents, you must be sensitive to your children. Some children are visual learners. Some are auditory learners, some kinesthetics learners. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you must be sensitive to your children. Try not to put your children down. And you want your children to get all A's? Did you get all A's at school? If you want your children to get all A's, what are you doing about it? Don't fool yourself. You know, they compare our children with middle-class white children in a school culture that backs them up in everything. The intelligence test that they take, more, you know, they are more affiliated with that. Our children are not. Those tests are not culture-free and culture-fair, right? So we need to look at what is happening with our children in schools, right? We must get more knowledgeable about the educational system, right? Because we are here. When you have children, your life is no longer your own. You have to make sure. The internet is there, it is good, but some of the information on the internet is inaccurate. Encourage your child to go to the library.
Yeah.
Encourage your child to read and to read widely. You need to focus on your children. And not only that, as a people, we need to share our ideas together. We need to be more supportive and unity and have more unity with each other. That's where we fall down, right? Even if we help our child, there are other people's children that we can help. And we should put ourselves out of the way then to help other people's children, right? Because together we are strong. Right? If you take a box of matches and you take one match out and you break that match, it breaks easily. But if you bundle the matches together, I'm asking you to try to break it. It's much more difficult. Right? So if we come together as a people and stop nonsense and pulling each other down and criticizing each other, we're typical. You know, we're in a world that nobody is perfect. But our children want a better future than we have. And so we must make every effort to ensure that we prepare them by giving them confidence, letting them know about their culture, and respecting who and what they are. Thank you very much. Any questions before I...
That's awesome.
That was very strong. Nice one.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I love it.
Are there any questions?
I said I was really awesome.
Thank you very much. That was really awesome. I just wanted to ask, do you speak like in a conference?
I have done a few things, but not in a big conference. I've been asked to do something later on in May, which I, you know, why our children are still failing. I should be speaking at that.
Okay.
I've done most of the speech I've given has been in my church.
Okay.
Yes, and to encourage parents.
Okay. So could you do like speaking like on parenting, like in a church?
Yes, I could do that. Yes, I've done, you know, things about parenting skills and things like that. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. It's very informative. I'm sure when people see it on the recording, I'm sure you might get some email questions as well.
That'd be fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to at this time welcome Ian. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, and I know that you've been involved in the supplementary education movement, faith-based supplementary education movement for a long time, with your family and things like that. So if you'd just like to share your experience and even in context of some of the questions that have been posed today.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name's Ian Lewinson, and I manage a supplementary school in Willesden. It's affiliated with the New Testament Church of God in Willesden. It's affiliated with the New Testament Church of God in Willesden, and I've been running that since 1997. That's quite a while, and it's been a challenge maintaining it over the years, and we've actually got to the stage where we've just received a silver award. We're now part of the national structure for supplementary education, and we're hoping to go for the gold award by Christmas. So, but in terms of my personal background, I got involved in education. I work currently as a lecturer in a college, and I left school without any qualifications myself. So in terms of going through the British educational system, I left school after spending 11 years at school without one CSE, or as it was called in those days. So I left school without any qualifications whatsoever. My teachers at the time were encouraging me to become a grave digger. And at one point that was the position that I actually came home to my mother and actually told her. My teacher had suggested that I become a grave digger, and I'd like to do this. It was something I took very seriously, because and my mother wasn't very happy when she heard me come home and say that. And I was trying to convince her otherwise, because at that time I was absolutely convinced that it was the position that I should take. In the end, she marched me down to a college where I took GCSEs, and I shocked myself, and maybe shocked her as well, when I was able to pass 7 GCSEs, well, they were called O-levels in those days, and went on to do A-levels, went on to do a degree and an MA eventually in education. But I say that just to say that it's very important that we don't listen to certain people who may be surrounding our lives and who may be trying to tell us that we can only go so far and that we can only get to a particular level. It's very important, I believe, to recognise that there are people who are in our lives who may be in the church or other people who are able to inspire and to encourage us. And it's important that these people are around in education, in all types of fields, so that they can have an impact upon the lives of young people. And I believe it's very important to begin by telling people that they can achieve, that they can do things, and that they can set their sights much higher than perhaps they would automatically think they can. As the previous speaker said, it's quite common for people to leave thinking that they cannot achieve this because there is nobody else that they know who has achieved this, or nobody else that they know who has done that. But it's very important to recognise that nothing is impossible if we know who we truly are, and if we truly know our history and what we have achieved throughout our history. And if we also recognise not just our history, but what is even currently being done. We don't even seem to often know what are the great things that are happening, that our own people are achieving and doing. And it's so important, I believe, that we do whatever we can, not only to encourage others, but to do the best that we can do ourselves. Quite often, parents used to say, I could have been this, I could have been that. And that's useful, and it's good to know they could have been that. But sometimes they also need to know that I'm trying to do this. And by trying, and they can see you trying to do it yourself, it's also inspiring to other people who see you trying and see you still going for things. In terms of just looking at the role that black-led churches made in education, I think black churches have been very inspiring to many people, to black people, because they have played a very prominent role in ensuring that black people have had a voice. Sometimes, even as a child, my father was a minister, and even when I felt at school, I felt perhaps I wasn't getting an opportunity to speak, I was still getting opportunities to speak in a church environment. So I didn't really feel uncomfortable speaking in front of a crowd or an audience. I still felt there were skills that were gained as a result of me growing up in that type of environment. We've had a range of challenges and successes over many decades, and the church has remained, despite all of the problems that have been associated within society, but the church has remained and has remained strong. And because of that, I believe that the church can keep going, it's really telling us that we as individuals and as a race can keep going, and we can all continue to make a very positive contribution. In terms of looking at should black churches be more supportive of black supplementary education providers, I believe they should be. They should do all that they can. The church is here to help the community and not just its members. And I believe the church should do whatever it can, because by helping the community, we are helping ourselves and we are helping the church, because the church really gets more credit and gets greater acknowledgement by what it does within the community. As Christians, we know that Christ didn't just work with his people or with his followers. He moved outside of that audience and worked with whoever he met and tried to do whatever he could with whoever he could to ensure that the greater good was always done. And finally, in terms of what are the opportunities for the black-led churches and the black supplementary schools, I believe, as our previous speakers have said, we have to make our opportunities, and we have to support and work together to ensure that whatever opportunities are becoming available, for example, becoming schools, and I was very pleased to hear when you were saying that you're actually forming a school, we have to do things like that now. We have to start saying, we've been doing this, supporting children, working with children on Saturday after Saturday for many years, but we now need to take it to the next level and to look at how we can come together and create the structures that we need to put in place to ensure that we can establish a range of schools across the country. Thank you very much.
I'd like to open it for any questions or comments.
I concur. I mean, you know, spawn again. You know, these are things we really should be doing, and I think for me it's a matter of when, really. The how, I think we're relatively there with the how. It's when, and hopefully we'll be able to, you know, work together and do some things together. I'll just give you a brief background about myself. I mean, I resigned in August to. Is it on? Yeah. I resigned in August to go into full-time ministry. But my background, I've got over 15 years background in bid writing, procurement, apprenticeship, training, DWP, SFA, the defunct LSC, and I've worked a lot with black boys in and around London, so places like Deptford, Tooting, Tower Hamlets, to name a few of the projects I've been involved in. Before I resigned, I was one of the directors of a training and recruitment company. I actually set up the training arm. I was there for 3 years, and I resigned my role, leaving at least 400 young people in apprenticeship. With 80% of the apprenticeship were delivered by SMEs in and around London and Kent. And I think with the vision you've got for school, it'd be fantastic if we can have an alternative curriculum also for these young people, even if we target level 2s and 3s, MBQs. I've seen young people start with level 2 and 3s and go on to do degrees. You know, for some young people, they need a break. Some people can just study straight, you know, do GCSEs, A-levels and go to uni. Some young people need a break. They need to experiment and do a bit of work here, get some qualification, build their confidence. And later on, they might go on to do degrees. So I'm a strong believer in work-based learning also. And I think that's an area that the black community have neglected. And that because stereotypes, like what you said, you know, go and be a grave digger, you know, oh, be a plumber, be this, be that, don't go to university. But there's still a lot that we can tap into there. There are lots of black businesses that will relish an opportunity if we put together a good package for them. So I think also that, you know, it's a matter of when, you know, we start doing these things, not how.
In relation to the black churches, I think we have to be mindful of the difference in churches. There was, you know, some more of the traditional black churches, the New Testament Church of God and Prophecy, First United Apostolic Churches, and the likes have celebrated 50 plus years or so. But now we've got the likes of the Redeemed Church, who is accelerating at a much faster rate than those that have been here, for decades. And so the challenge, because the supplementary schools are not only being peculiar for the black community, but for every migrant community, they've always established supplementary education programs. And so there's something about migration that fosters this flame of let's support our children, because initially the children will probably be bilingual, there'll be culturally deficit of the host country and things like that. So there is this composite model that seems that migrating communities bring to supplement the existing education. So at the moment, I would say that we have to have a strategy that will, I do believe that some of the more established churches do have national youth departments and the likes, but it's more of the newer churches, i.e. the Redeemed churches and other Pentecostal churches that are relatively new in the last decade, then they're going to need a little bit more support in relation to infrastructure support. One thing they do have, which is mission mind and kingdom building, and not organizational building. And so I think the opportunity for the majority black-led churches is absolutely great. But we have to understand it's a two-horse race at the moment. We've got those that are relatively new, but have the zeal, and have also been able, because of where they've come into the market with predominantly educated people and infrastructure and their own resources. They're not starting from the same point that we start. Many of our parents in the Caribbean started with 50 years ago, which were living in shared accommodation, very low income, low education relatively, and so those are the challenges. But that's also the opportunities. So I do believe that there needs to be a model where we can come together and just speak as we're speaking now. But the fora for church leaders, the majority of black-led church leaders, are very few, because they're all very busy doing their own church leadership conferences and events. So it does take someone like a Les Isaacs who will stand up and raise the standard and say, this is the opportunity, and give people a clear vision of how it links from the business model into your local strategy. For example,